thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. What is your name and your current profession?
My name is Natalie. My current profession is I'm a dam safety engineer.
Awesome. And what led you to that career path?
So basically, I went to college. I majored in environmental resource engineering, which actually focuses on water. So water infrastructure, water treatment. Um, Dam safety is more of actually a civil engineering, not really as much environmental, but it does still have to do with water, obviously, but more water quantity than water quality. Because if you don't know a lot about dams, it holds the reservoir water. So I'm still working in water, just not the same water that I went to college for.
What
So
made you want to work in water engineering?
okay. So actually, when I started college for environmental engineering, I had no idea what it was. I thought environmental engineering had to do with renewable energy. And then about by my junior year, I'm like, everything has to do with water. Everything that I'm doing has to do with water, wastewater, drinking water. And I actually took a class my senior year, which was when I finally was like, okay, water's pretty cool. And it was called Water: An Incredible Journey. And it wasn't so technical, but it basically went through how water is involved in like every facet of life. So whether it's like powering an engine, or obviously humans for drinking water, and then plants and agriculture, and it's just involved in more than you would ever think that it's involved in. In environmental engineering, there is other sides like air quality, waste disposal, but I was most interested in the water side because it's like involved in everything that we do in life.
And was there like a specific activist or someone who kind of made you think, well, this is an interesting facet?
I would say in high school, I took just an environmental science class. And that was kind of like what sparked me to get into environmental kind of things. And that professor that I had in high school actually was like really passionate. And I think she was like one of the first ones that got me started on like, okay, I actually care about the environment. And it's like my sister kind of went like the biology route and is like about people and like the human body. And I wasn't really interested in biology, but like the environment, it was like it's another part of Earth, but I think it's super important. So
Do you think you had a difficult time working in the field of science because you are a woman?
I would say now, not as much as, maybe 10 years ago. Um, when I was in college, my graduating engineering class, it was split even, half women, half men, and even outside of science, just STEM in general, is more predominantly historically male field, engineering especially. But my engineering program was half women, half men, almost split exactly. But then I've talked to my dad, who also got an engineering degree, and obviously 20 years before me, but he said maybe one or two. And then I'm sure if you go back to our grandfather, it could have been zero.
Yeah.
And it's like 3 generations of engineers, but I'm the first woman. So
That is a really well stated response, that you're kind of being a trendsetter, or do you think that this is going to kind of be something that you're going to see a lot more female engineers coming because it's starting to be a more female populated industry?
I think there are going to be a lot more females going into engineering. I mean, there are now. Even I work in a very small program. We only have 3 people in our program, and 2 of us are women. And I think it's definitely getting. That's why I said maybe 10 years ago, even shorter, maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think even just going to college, you're seeing more and more women in the engineering field, in the STEM field in general.
So where did you go to school at, and where did you end up?
So I graduated from the State University of New York, in College of Environmental Science and Forestry. And then I'm currently working in Oklahoma. So definitely a transition for sure. Different, but the college that I graduated, I'll put a little plug. It's the #2 environmental college in the country.
Wow.
And in New York, I think it was only in New York, but it was the #1 for graduating female engineers.
That's
So
amazing that they had that specific focus.
for state schools, So out of the
Yeah.
state schools in New York, it had the most like graduating female engineers.
Thank you so much for that insight. With your actual job, what all do you have to do on a daily basis?
So I regulate. So I work with different communities. We also review condition ratings of dams. We look at the downstream impact because I work in dam safety. So it's not just like the actual structure. We're looking at communities that could be affected by the dam. So it's
So is
actually
it like if the dam were to fail, then these would be all the areas, or is it more like this is the stream that it's going down?
kind of both. So it's like it's hazard mitigation. So if you think about a floodplain, dams also have that type of area. And it's like hazard mitigation basically, but also looking at the actual structure. So not just about the water, making sure the structure is being properly maintained, and we work with the owners. And so it's pretty cool. Dam safety, people don't know a lot about it,
Yeah.
but actually, I mean, even just in Oklahoma, we have thousands of dams. So that's nationwide, worldwide. Dams are an infrastructure that people don't always think about.
Yeah, I know in Tennessee it's super popular because that's where the focus for the TVA came from. They had the Tennessee Volunteer Authority, and that helped cause so many jobs to come into being because they decided to go through and create all these dams. Because I think in the state of Tennessee, there are only a few lakes, and they went through and they created all these water structures to help create jobs as well. So I don't know the history in Oklahoma at all, but it's kind of interesting to hear you be able to elaborate on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, no, and it's all over the country because dams like not only create a water source, but also, can be for flood control. And then you think about, even just recreation, having a lake can bring a lot of value to small communities, especially in rural areas like Oklahoma and rural areas like Tennessee. If you have a lake, it gives a reason for people to get together.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, waterways are kind of a source of tourism, whenever you're in kind of the more rural, especially southern areas. What kind of adversities have you faced with finding a job in this field?
I would say I put in a lot of applications. One thing that I will notice is, so in engineering, you basically graduate with an engineering degree. It can be a 4 or 5 year program. At the end of your program, you take what's called to get the certification of being an engineer in training. You take that exam, and then you have that certification. Then to be a professional engineer, you have to work under a professional engineer for 4 more years, and then you have to take another exam. These exams are, 6 hours. And once you take that, then you become a professional engineer. But one thing that I noticed is I have this certification. I took the test. I just graduated college, and a lot of jobs with like an actual, like even engineer in training, or the requirements are like, yes, the certification, yes, the college experience, but a lot of them want 2 years of experience. And I worked as a server for a long time, and I found the same conundrum when I was working as a hostess at a restaurant. You go to try to be a server, and everybody wants you to have serving experience. So it's like kind of like you're running in a loop of like, well, everybody wants 2 years experience, but how do I get this? So I was really lucky with the job that I found where they didn't really have the experience requirement because it was more entry level. But that's one thing that I saw. And then also just, right now, it's actually going to be a really good time. I would encourage a lot of people to get into the engineering field because with the infrastructure bill that just went in, there's going to be a lot of money being put into infrastructure. And actually, we're kind of short on engineers. Like
Wow.
in the country, it's a good, right now, it's a good place to go into for sure.
And I know a lot of other fields are kind of getting swarmed right now, because people are highly applying in those specific areas. So I don't think engineering is really thought of quite as much, especially environmental engineering. So do you have any females in your life who you really admire or who you have looked up to, who have really inspired you to be as motivated as you are?
I would say multiple. I would say probably like, because, I was the youngest. I mean, out of like all of the women in my family. So not only going up to, my mom, but then thinking about like all of my female cousins, they I think we have 8 of us all together, and, everybody has a college degree. So it was kind of like looking at everyone in my family. It's like, oh, it's attainable. And then going into all different fields of research and education and government. And so I think I had a really solid foundation of women in my family that, I mean, my mom stay home with me. But, I feel like we go down, and my aunt worked, I think, too, but stayed home too mainly. And but then you go down to our next generation, and all the 3 women, 4 women above me, are professionals and went to college and graduated. And that's where you kind of see, I think, even now you're saying in the STEM, it's like the generational of women, like what we're doing it's changing.
Yeah. And it is kind of groundbreaking. I mean, like seeing kind of our parents who we had all these stay at home moms,
Yeah,
even
your
some of
mom too.
yeah, like even some of them who had college degrees and were
Yes.
well educated and were experienced in a field. And then all of a sudden, we have this boom of women who are highly professional and finding their voice in that field. So I love that you brought all that up. So, stereotypes are most of the time hateful things that are put upon other people. Do you feel that you have ever had any negative stereotypes because of your gender or because of the way that you look or the way that other people perceive you? I know that's a tough one. But thinking through the lens of a middle school girl, that's where we're getting these questions.
I would say like one thing that I've kind of like, it's not really a bad thing, but I've noticed, I've been in this position for 2 years, and one thing that I notice is somebody says, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And I say, "Oh, I'm an engineer." And the first reaction is, "Oh, you're an engineer?" And so it's not like a hateful thing,
Yeah.
but it is like if a guy said to you, "I'm an engineer," would you have the same reaction? Would you be so surprised? And I think that's definitely one thing, is like it's surprise. Oh, wow, like that's amazing. I can't believe you accomplished like that kind of reaction. And it always kind of like,
And do you think that's partially because of your age as well? Do you think it's like a combo thing?
yeah, my age, I would say as well. And then, like I'm sure you've gotten this. My hair is not as blonde right now, but people love to say things about blondes not being
Yeah.
smart, and just generalized stereotypes about women in general. I'm very lucky because I work in a very professional workplace where all the men that I work with are like respect my opinion and everything like that. So I feel very valued. But I know some women that work in this field maybe don't have that same experience.
Yeah. Has there been anything to help keep your mindset really positive throughout all this?
I would say the people that I work with are just like really look for in this field leaders, people like you said, people that you want to aspire to be. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously all the people that I graduated with, we also were engineers. So, you know, I talked to other girlfriends that I went to college with, and they're on different paths. And one thing that I find kind of like to be the similar thing is, you know, your boss matters.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of you, and are they a good leader, and do they respect your opinion? And or, you know, and I've had friends that aren't having good experiences just based on who they work for, and not even what they're doing at all.
Yeah. And sometimes it's who you work with. Like those colleagues can be completely life changing for you. Like you have one person who you're working with who would make it kind of instrumental for your success because they're always building you up. So I
Yeah.
think that's definitely something you can see in all facets. Overall, do you think that this is your long term career goal, or do you think that you're going to aspire to do something else with your life in the future?
I think that I'll probably stay here for a while. I like it, and the more that I
Hmm.
do it, the more interested I get in it, and the more, like I said, I started with water, and I was like, yeah, this is everywhere. And then you get into dams, and I didn't even know about it. And once again, it's like when you start to realize how many different communities are impacted by their drinking water source, or, you know, all these different things. So I really do think I'll stay in it, but if not, it'll definitely be something water related if I go to a different country. Or, you know, we're very fortunate in the United States for our water quality. You know, some
Hmm.
countries are not. So that would be one thing that would consider.
So when you're saying water quality, do you think that you might try to search in other fields that like you would be helping people get clean water or something like that?
Maybe, yeah. But what I'm doing right now, I feel like my main thing is, and which is kind of something that you gotta look for too in a job in engineering, is like just that you're making an impact, and you're like that's what I said. Like the main part of dam safety is like hazard mitigation. So
Hmm.
you're protecting people, you're helping people have a main water source. So I think that's like a big thing for me. So as long as I'm like having an impact on people, then I think that I'm happy with what I'm doing.
Outstanding response. Thank you so much for all of your insights. I really appreciate it. And I will probably have follow up questions because I have a lot of young scientists that are going to want to dig into this.
Yes,
Thank
for
you
sure.
again.
Bye.
Bye.